Colombia expats the ugly. No Second Amendment. There is no Second Amendment in Colombia, much to my chagrin. Colombia does have a process for a firearms permit, though it is cumbersome to get one. Suffice to say that the first thing required is Colombian citizenship. At that point one may apply for a weapons permit. With the recent election of a socialist president, we will see if even that basic right will be changed. Of course, the criminals have access to pretty much any kind of firearm one would want. However, being caught with an unlicensed firearm is heavy jail time. Because of this dynamic, bladed weapons are very common. It is my everyday carry preference as I wait on the bureaucracy to obtain a legal firearm. Armed leftist groups. Armed leftist groups still exist in Colombia. I will focus on the three major armed groups operating in Colombia today. There are many splinter groups and criminal affiliates that are too numerous to mention. To cut this explanation to the core, all these criminal elements, whether leftist, paramilitary, etc., are either drug cartels, affiliates of drug cartels, or armed muscle for drug cartels. They're armed equal to, or greater than, the Colombian military and are trained well and hardened by years of guerrilla warfare. They spout Marxist philosophy while selling drugs as part of transnational criminal organizations. Let's take a look at them. Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC. The FARC is the oldest and largest group among Colombia's left-wing rebels and is one of the world's richest guerrilla armies. The group was founded in 1964, when it declared its intention to overthrow the government and install a Marxist regime. But tactics changed in the 1990s, as right-wing paramilitary forces attacked the rebels, and the FARC became increasingly involved in the drug trade to raise money for its campaign. President Alvaro Uribe, who swept to power in 2002 vowing to defeat the rebels and was re-elected in 2006, launched an unprecedented offensive against the FARC. Backed by U.S. military aid. The group had about 16,000 fighters in 2001, according to the Colombian government, but this is believed to have dropped to about 8,000, mainly because of desertions. The FARC, which is on U.S. and European lists of terrorist organizations, has suffered a series of blows in recent years. The most dramatic setback was the rescue by the military of 15 high-profile hostages, including the former presidential candidate Ingrid Betancourt in 2008. The hostages had long been seen as a key element in the rebels' attempts to exchange their captives for jailed guerrillas. The group's founder and longtime leader, Manuel Shershot Marulanda, died that same year of a heart attack. On September 23, 2010, the group's top military leader, Jorge Briceño, also known as Mono Jojoy, was killed in a raid on his jungle camp in the eastern region of Macarena. In November 2011, Alfonso Cano, leader of the group since Marulanda's death, was killed in a bombing and ground raid in Cauca province. He was replaced by Rodrigo Londoño, better known under his alias of Timokenko. However, in what was interpreted by analysts as a major concession, the FARC announced in February 2012 that it was abandoning kidnapping for ransom. In November 2012, the FARC and the government opened peace talks, focusing on 6 key issues: land reform, political participation, disarmament of the rebels, drug trafficking, the rights of victims, and the implementation of the peace deal. National Liberation Army, ELN. The left-wing group was formed in 1964 by intellectuals inspired by the Cuban Revolution and Marxist ideology. It was long seen as more politically motivated than the FARC, staying out of the illegal drugs trade on ideological grounds. The ELN reached the height of its power in the late 1990s, carrying out hundreds of kidnappings and hitting infrastructure such as oil pipelines. The ELN ranks have since declined from around 4,000 to an estimated 1,500 to 2,000, suffering defeats at the hands of the security forces and paramilitaries. In recent years, ELN units have become involved in the drug trade, often forming alliances with criminal gangs. The group is on U.S. and European lists of terrorist organizations. Shortly after the FARC entered into peace talks with the Colombian government in November 2012, the ELN leader said that his group was also interested in negotiating a deal with the government. The group was rebuffed by the president, who said it needed to show actions rather than words before it could sit down at the negotiating table. 9 months later, after the release of a Canadian mining executive the ELN had been holding, President Juan Manuel Santos said the government was ready to talk to the ELN. He said he hoped negotiations could start as soon as possible. So far, no more details about the framework of the planned talks have been released. In recent years, ELN has bombed police stations and damaged oil refineries. United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, AUC. This right-wing umbrella group was formed in 1997 by drug traffickers and landowners to combat rebel kidnappings and extortion. The AUC had its roots in the paramilitary armies built up by drug lords in the 1980s, and says it took up arms in self-defense, in the place of a powerless state. Critics denounced it as little more than a drug cartel. The AUC's influence stemmed from its links with the army and some political circles, and its strength was boosted by financing from business interests and landowners. The group carried out massacres and assassinations, targeting left-wing activists who speak out against them. In 2003, a peace deal was signed with the AUC, under which paramilitary leaders surrendered in exchange for reduced jail terms and protection from extradition. However, the Colombian authorities have extradited more than a dozen former paramilitary leaders to the U.S. to face drug trafficking charges since 2008, saying they had violated the terms of the peace deal. Some 32,000 paramilitary fighters have been demobilized, but the legal framework underpinning the process has been widely criticized for allowing those responsible for serious crimes to escape punishment. Source: BBC News. I know it sounds overwhelming, but have you stopped to consider for a moment the numerous heavily armed Mexican drug cartels that operate in every major city of the United States? Particularly the southwestern portion of the United States. How about the Black Guerrilla family, coming out of San Quentin prison in 1966? Or the Crips and Bloods, forever associated with the crack epidemic of the 1980s? Hells Angels? Mongols? Bandidos? Well, you get my point. I hope you have enjoyed this informative video. Please like and subscribe if you found the content valuable. Stay tuned for more boots on the ground commentary. See you soon.